GAY brand is 20 years old this year. Started off as a gay radio program on a station, which kind of minorities radio station called Spectrum Radio. So it was kind of unique because they had like a Jewish program, they had a Libyan program, they had a Muslim program, they had, you name it, they had everything. And then they had us as well. So we kind of started off as a radio show. And I was working for a club night called Bang at the time, and they fell out with the owners of the Astoria, so I got to take it on, and I changed the name to GAY because obviously I'd already done like interviews with people like Michael Barrymore and Jason Donovan and all that had already hit the headlines, so I was kind of known for that already. So I thought the brand had started to build a name. So it's then started as a club. It went from a radio show to a club night, then the bar, then a second bar, and then Manchester. I've learned a lot in the last 12 months since opening GAY Manchester, because I think if people think they can just replicate what they do in one city and do another and just think that's what it is, it doesn't kind of work like that. I mean, obviously you have kind of a module that you kind of work to, but it took me a couple of months of us being open here before I kind of felt we were getting it right. So you know, you kind of started off with what you may do in London, you think, what, but you know, 2 hours on a train, they are, and they're kind of very different cities, and what I think is right for London may not be right for Manchester, and vice versa. And it's a little bit of trial and error and seeing what you think worked. And also there were things that we brought up here that I think annoyed people at first, but kind of like wanted to stick to our guns, and now it's just a natural thing. For example, we insisted that people got searched before going into the venue, and when we first started, a lot of people got offended by that because they're not used to it. But for me, a priority is that when you're inside GAY, you're our responsibility, and you know, I need to know that you're kind of safe inside there. So the search isn't a judgment on the individual coming in. It's to make sure that everybody, when they're in the venue, is safe. And also we have a zero tolerance on drugs. So you know, I think it's more to make sure that what we want to do kind of happens. There's a lot of things about why GAY works in Manchester. I think the first thing is I think, and I don't want to get slagged off for saying this, but I think Canal Street kind of lost a bit of direction for a while. You know, it got a bit of a reputation for hen nights and stag nights, and you know, when you're supposed to be kind of like the gay street, that's not really the kind of reputation. So I think, you know, when we came up here, I think our goal was to create a gay identity again, to create a safe space, and obviously to have no hen nights, no stag nights, and it's nice actually, since we've kind of opened in the last year and had that kind of policy, other venues are now starting to follow suit. So I think, you know, it's not just about GAY, but it's also about Canal Street having that kind of gay identity. And so I think by GAY bringing that back has brought a bit of life to Canal Street as well. For me, I mean, several years ago I was involved in Pride London. I had actually booked the acts for the main stage in London, and you know, when I was doing that, we had people like Kylie, Steps, and you know, back then doing Pride. And then London Pride has kind of completely lost its direction, and I was getting really annoyed. And I had actually been to Manchester Pride about 10 years before, but I hadn't been. And before we opened here in Manchester, I was really jealous of both Manchester and Brighton Pride, because everybody used to come back to London afterwards and go, oh my God, wasn't it amazing? Why can't London Pride be that? And I was really jealous, because I was thinking, hang on, why can't London Pride be that? Why can't people talk about London Pride the way they talk about Manchester and Brighton? So to actually now be part of Manchester Pride means that I don't have to be jealous anymore. I can just be bitter towards London Pride. But you know, it's really hard, because with Manchester, until you experience it, you don't realise how good it is. And this is, you know, I missed the Friday I came up very, very late. This is last year, very late on the Saturday night. What I did was we had an act on in London. As soon as I came off stage, I jumped in a cab, came straight to Manchester, and I got here. It must have been like 4 in the morning. But even at 4 in the morning, you could just walking through those gates with your wristband, you could just sense an atmosphere on the street. It was just kind of electric. It was really, you could feel that it was special, even though the street was quieting down and all that. And then the next day, the Sunday, it was just the fact you could walk around and it was completely what gay pride should be all about. And then obviously getting to go on stage and introduce the Sugar Babes and Alexandra was amazing. And in a way, it was our way of kind of like, I suppose, saying we're here, but also part of the Manchester lesbian and gay community. Because it's all very well just opening a bar, but that doesn't make you part of the street or the community. So for us, by doing Alexandra and Sugar Babes, meant that that was the first kind of thing that we'd done community orientated. So it was kind of really important for us. But I mean, the Elton John AIDS Foundation, I mean, I'm a little bit annoyed with myself because I mean, GOI's been going 20 years and it's only been like, well, 4 years ago, we kind of did a year of fundraising. After we bought Heaven, I wanted something to link to the 30th anniversary of, because Heaven was 30 years being a gay venue. So I wanted to do something and raise 30,000, 1,000 for each year of Heaven. And at the time, I'd started running and someone got me a place for the London Marathon for Amnesty International. And so we did, the first year was for Amnesty. And I kind of suddenly thought, why haven't we done this before, linked ourselves with a charity? And so after I'd done the first London Marathon, and I thought, well, I want to do it with another charity. And we had done events with the Elton John AIDS Foundation, but I was a bit worried about who we were going to choose, because if we did it with one charity, it's going to kind of like, you know, other charities are going to be, well, hang on, why aren't you doing it for us, kind of thing. But the good thing about the Elton John AIDS Foundation is that you're not actually giving to them. All they do is give grants to other charities. So by doing it for the Elton John AIDS Foundation, you're actually doing it for the Terence Higgins Trust, you're doing it for Food Chain, you're doing it for literally hundreds and hundreds of charities, because they all, you know, they give grants to so many charities across the world, not just the UK, but across the world. But the good thing now is that whenever we get approached by a charity that, look, will you do something for us? We can go, well, we can't because we're linked to the Elton John AIDS Foundation. However, why don't you contact them and apply for a grant? So we actually encourage people to go and, you know, and we obviously talk to the Elton John AIDS Foundation as well, say, look, you know, this charity's approached us, we've asked them to contact you for a grant. So that way, hopefully, by doing it for one charity, we're actually doing it for thousands, hopefully. It's kind of weird, because what happens is I'm always looking for places for GOY to open. I mean, obviously, the natural place would always be Brighton and Manchester. And we looked at a venue in Brighton, and I nearly went for it, and I've kind of changed my mind. I have to get a feel for it. When we opened GOY Bar in London, that originally was Manto's, owned by obviously the people next door, so we bought it off them. And there was a time when Manto's was up for sale next door, and they had offered it with when Peter, who owned it with, I can't remember her name, who owns it now, but they were going to sell it, and we were offered it. And I didn't really, I have a vision of what I want GOY Bar to look like, so I didn't really feel that with Manto. But I remember going out on the gay scene that night and going along Canal Street, and we came into Spirit for a drink, and I looked at it and thought, do you know, this is the bar I want. And that was about 2 years ago. And then I saw on Facebook or somewhere that Spirit, the company, Brannigan's, who owns Spirit, had gone into solvency, and View and Spirit were up for sale. So we went to look at both, but Spirit had already been in my mind because I'd seen it a couple of years back, and we made an offer and got it. So it was in my mind. It felt right. You know, it's not just about the location, but it's also about the venue feeling right for what I want to do, and this just felt completely right. I love the fact I can get away from London. There's a bit more of a community feel, I think, in Manchester than there is in London. I mean, obviously, like, GAY London has a lot of regular customers and you know them, but there's also a lot of like, my background where I really came from, I used to DJ in a local pub, and you know, it was very community oriented. It was all the locals and things like that. And in London, when I moved up to doing GAY, I lost that, and I kind of missed it. And coming back and doing Manchester, it kind of like that kind of community. There's more of a community feel of the regulars, and everyone seems to know each other, and the staff are much more. They integrate better together than I think London. They're more friends. They all, you know, everyone seems to know each other, and so I kind of like that. I kind of enjoy it more coming to Manchester and spending time up here than I would do any time in London. So it's kind of nice coming up here. The only disadvantage of Manchester is the weather, and it's awful. but and it's also kind of weird when the sun shines in Manchester. Oh my God, I've never seen Canal Street go so mad. The moment that sun's out, Canal Street's just packed. It's like they grab every second of that sunshine.
And finally, what does the future hold for Jeremy Joseph and the GAY brand?
That's a really awful question at the moment, because there's a few things going on at the moment. Worst case scenario, hopefully we'll continue running the 4 venues. Best case scenario, we'll expand the brand worldwide.